This conference will now be recorded.
Right.
Okay, ready? Y'all ready? Good. Where's Hammond?
Up there.
Yes, he is. No, he's fine. Leave him alone. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. We do need to add a couple things. I'd like to add as D, Fisher's, Nick Fisher's fireworks permit application. And then I'd like to add under discussion, number 16 is the comp plan. And that's just kind of pointing us in some direction. Anybody else have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening? Anybody? What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
A second. Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. As always, general public comment. General public comment. Any general public comment? Is anybody watching us? Oh, all right, good. We're up. We'll do public comment again at the end. Consent agenda. We have minutes from 6/5/2024, and then the supplemental appropriations number 18 from the schools for a federal estate grant and then a food reimbursement. Total of $383,032.76. Anything on that?
Unless there's questions.
Anybody?
The school board passed this, and as normal, they send a request over for the supplemental appropriation. So no local monies. This is monies they receive.
That comes into our treasury.
Yes, sir.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, handful of special appearances. Mr. Bowman, come and talk to us about the Shenandoah National Park and the Blue Ridge Committee.
Is this on?
Maybe.
I'm gonna give a report on the minutes of the Blue Ridge Committee for Shenandoah National Park Relations. First opportunity I've had to do this, the meeting was held on May 16th at Big Meadows. But before I do that, I'd like to give a big thanks to Kim Turner. I'm secretary of the Blue Ridge Committee, and Kim has, not only does she keep Jonathan Weekly straight, but she's been a big help to me with all my secretarial lack of skills. But thank you, Kim. We had, there are 8 counties, 6 were represented for various reasons. So 8 counties are on this committee. There was no representative from the Shenandoah National Park because, as you know, the Superintendent Kinney retired April 30th after 34 years with the Park Service, and the interim superintendent is Lewis Rogers, acting superintendent. So there is no one in charge up in Luray right now, but there was no representative. One of the things we do at the meeting is each of the counties gives a report. And there are a couple of things that I think are of real interest. Albemarle County was there, and if you recall back in early 2000s, Biscuit Run Park, that was 1,100 and almost 1,200 acres south of Interstate 64 in Albemarle County, was to be one of our new state parks. There's a lot of controversy about it, if you recall. It is now Albemarle County property, and it will become a new Albemarle County Park. Opens up October 2024. So that's great that that piece of land is not going to be developed as the original purchaser planned. Then from Greene County, as you go up 33, for those of you that know Swift Run Gap, just before you enter the park, there was a yellow bar gate right there. 25 acres that the park acquired right there. So that was done through an intermediary, because you cannot give, you have to give land to the park. The park cannot purchase property by act of Congress. Page County was interesting, they're spraying for gypsy moth, which is now called spongy moth. So they're in the process of doing that, and the representative there said that, mentioned that Luray Caverns is now the #2 Virginia state attraction. So I'm sure everybody's already been there one time or another. Rockingham County, if you recall the Blue Ridge Heritage Project, every county has a chimney built. We have one at Kriglersville with a plaque commemorating the people that were moved out of the park. Well, 7 of the 8 counties now have their chimneys, and through the efforts of Rockingham County, they have a biking trail now and a brochure. You can visit all those monuments. And I think Augusta County is going at, is it Grand Caverns there below Grottos? And that's in the process of being built right now. So that's another tourist thing I think is really important. Let's see. The program at this meeting was, first off, the revised bylaws, and I assume all the supervisors have a copy of that. To give you an idea, if you want to read that, find out what the committee is all about.
Bylaws.
So the committee was formed back in 1992, when George Allen was governor. There were some problems between the park and the county, and I don't want to go into that detail, but if you want to know, I can tell you later. But the Shenandoah National Park Trust, which is the big fundraising arm up on Shenandoah, they have a new program called the Good Neighbor Program. And in your minutes, they kind of list, one of the big things is trailhead easements. And we just recently lost a couple where the public can no longer cross that piece of private land to access the park. People that trash or misbehave always endanger that kind of an easement. Nothing in Madison County right now. I think we've been real lucky. And then they want to be able to work with people that want to donate money or land to the national park. So Beth Mizzle, who used to be with the prison, if you're familiar with that, the Invasive Species Management Program, she's in charge of that for the trust. Facilitate a flow of information and collaboration between conservation partners to ensure the most effective approach for land conservation, if you want to interpret that. So we'll see what happens. Also that Judd Buchanan is now the Board of Supervisors representative for the Blue Ridge Committee. We hate not to have Clardy. He was a lot of fun to ride up and down the mountain with, and we'd always go up and get dinner beforehand. So
Thank you, Bruce.
we'll give you a good orientation, Judd.
Yeah, have supper, Judd. It's really good.
And the only other thing I've got to mention, starting right after the flood of 1995, which has been, 27 years ago, they started studying the native brook trout population. Now, if you're a trout fisherman, there are two types of trout fishing, the people that go after the stock trout, but the real purists, they go up in the park and they try to catch the native brook trout. And this is the last stronghold, this in the Smoky Mountains on the East Coast. They're in danger. Since 1996, there's been a 50% decline in the population. And you're talking 3 fish per 100 meters of waterway. And that's pretty slim. And so the problem is low water, high water temperatures, anything above 72 degrees, acid rain. They're finding microplastics in the headwaters of these streams, finding microplastics in the fish tissue. They've studied brook trout in depth for the last 20-some years, and they're on the way out. So what does that mean to us economically? I run into people back in the park that come from all over the country to fish the Rapidan. That's a famous river, but that's maybe not going to be that way in the future. It's just something to think about. I think that's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions?
What were the changes in the bylaws?
I'm sorry?
What were the changes in the bylaws?
They were real minor, just a word here and there. Kim, did you,
We have them.
oh, you have that? They were just like, yeah, they just added some words. There's no major changes. It's still, I think the concern is if it turns into a economic development committee, and that's not the purpose of it. In my tenure on the committee, we've had, I think, 2 blow-ups. One was with the bear hunters, and we met up at Luray with Shenandoah National Park Rangers with their bulletproof vests on. The bear hunters can, I know most of them, so it was no problem, but Superintendent Northrop at the time explained that in any park in the nation, your dog has to be on a 6-foot or less leash. But they did, we resolved that problem, and that could have blown up and been a shooting war. So that's the reason for the committee, is just a line of communication. So.
All right, I got one more question for you. You said that since the park has an interim superintendent currently, they did not have representation at the meeting?
They did not.
It's challenging.
This was after Pat Kenny
Yeah.
left the park, so, yeah, I met Roger Lewis, I think he's Fredericksburg Battlefield,
All right.
lives in Ashland, so I have not met the gentleman. So hopefully we'll get a full-time superintendent soon.
What other
Yeah.
questions we have?
Oh, I was just saying, the other challenge to the native brook trout was those bridges that VDOT put in.
Exactly, that's another,
Stream crossings that didn't allow
Yeah.
the trout to get upstream, and there are 4 or 5 different organizations working to raise money to remove those and
yeah, Trail Unlimited
upstream, so
and
that, yeah.
Piedmont Environmental Council.
And they've been pretty successful so far. The one at the White Oak parking lot, remember?
Sure.
We
Yeah.
went to that one.
I remember that one.
Yeah, the brook trout's a salmonoid,
Yeah,
so it goes upstream to spawn.
yeah, and they can't
So,
get up
yeah,
there.
you gotta give them free passage if they're, and what's other things happening is the water worms, smallmouth bass and brown trout are moving up. So the brook trout's in trouble. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Bruce. All right. Ms. Wehrman is going to give us a 2024 point-in-time count.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Wareham. I'm from the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission, representing the Foothills Housing Network, which is the continuum of care for our region, the 5 counties. And last year and the year before, we did more of a presentation and had everything. This year, we've been trying to kind of go around and just give some key figures, but then allow time for you all to ask questions and kind of tell us what you want to know, instead of just assuming what you might be interested in. I do want to say, just real quick before I start, I love coming into Madison County. I worked at Madison DSS for about 5 years, and low-key, it's my favorite place. It's one of my favorite counties to come. But I was talking with Mr. Weekly earlier and told him that we did have an increase in people experiencing homelessness in the county this year. It wasn't a great increase, but as you know, when you have a smaller population, any little increase can make for big percentages.
Could I interrupt you real quick?
Please.
The definition of homelessness that you're going to address is what? Without a roof, staying on a neighbor's floor, on a relative's floor?
Thank you so
Which one?
much for bringing that up, because it is definitely something that,
very
it's
different.
just one of those terms.
Okay.
So we're talking about literal homelessness, not,
No roof.
They have no roof. So they're in a car, they're in the woods, they're just in an abandoned building, structure, anything like that. One person we did have commented on their survey this year in Madison that they were staying in a shed. So someone was allowing a person, they couldn't allow them to stay in their home, but they were allowing them to stay in their shed. They were still considered as experiencing homelessness, though. But I think that that's also, it's a telling part of a rural community that we do have people that are in structures like that because people want to help their neighbors in some way, even if they can't actually bring them in. So the point in time count locally, we put it together and plan it, and we carry it out, and it goes and it fulfills a lot of federal requirements, but locally it can really help with localities in their planning. And you were talking about your comprehensive plan and things like that. Where do unsheltered residents fit in to your county? This year, for the entire region, we did not really increase or decrease. We had 274 individuals that we were able to count. These counts are never going to be accurate because people who do not want to be found know how not to be found. And there is such a concern, particularly with people who have children. If they have children and those children are not being cared for in a way that would keep them kind of above board with various agencies, they don't always know that agencies like DSS aren't going to take children simply because of homelessness. I remember that was the first thing that I was taught when I started at Madison DSS, was we don't do that. We look for ways to assist. We look for ways to keep it from happening again. I would say that the greatest increases we saw this year were, for the first time, there were more women than men experiencing homelessness. We had a greater number of children this year than last year. Last year, we had actually decreased regionally. Madison decreased its number of children experiencing homelessness outside of the other counties. So Madison was the only county that decreased in children. I would also say that so there were 16 adults and 3 children that we were able to count, and that is because of Celine Pumphrey and the amazing people around Madison that helped. And there was a massive partnership this year. The interesting thing I would say about Madison is you all had the highest increase in individuals identifying as Hispanic who were also identifying as being homeless. Again, thinking of the population to that amount of people. So it's not, you didn't have a robust increase. It was just because of the percentages within the population. And there were more children affected by racial disparities this year than any other year. In the region, the racial makeup is around 11 to 14% African American, and then mostly Caucasian, and then some mixed. But children, there were more people that were non-white identifying who were experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And so that is generally something that has to be tackled at a systemic level as opposed to kind of a locality level. So I just wanted to mention that, as well as our numbers for veterans experiencing homelessness did decrease a little, and that was due to the vouchers that were released during the pandemic. Along with the housing vouchers were also VASH vouchers, which are specifically for veterans. And that definitely helped us house a larger number of veterans than we've been able to in the past. So in Madison, 13 of the 19 people were unsheltered, and 6 were staying with family or friends, but had endpoints. So it was probably likely that those 6 became homeless since January, or perhaps received some sort of help. The other thing that I wanted to point out was that the biggest thing to keep people from becoming homeless in the first place is relationship and connection, and that people don't become homeless or become poor because they run out of money necessarily, as much as running out of relationships, running out of connection. And I think that that is something that has helped rural communities stay ahead of the game. Unfortunately, because of just our cultures and the way that life has progressed, even rural communities are getting a little more disconnected now. And so we've seen a significant rise in the last 10 years in homelessness in our rural communities. So that, I just wanted to present that and then see if there were any specific questions with this, or just kind of regionally.
Do we have any questions or comments or thoughts?
Well, yeah, so the home, you're talking about, reasons for being homeless, running out of money. Do most of the homeless people that you all have identified, are they disabled in some way? Are they mentally, they have problems, mentally impaired in some way, or what? So that would lead them, that would lead you to direct them towards some sort of other service before you try to get them in a home situation.
Okay.
What-
So, yes, so we actually did see, we had a higher number of people answer that yes, they were disabled this year than last year, as far as why they felt they were experiencing homelessness. And that could be any mixture of physical disabilities to mental disabilities, or developmental delays, anything like that. As far as catching them, kind of catching them before the homelessness starts, we also have a prevention program. And so it's not an eviction prevention program, and that's where we run into issues when there's no new units. And so there's nowhere to put people, especially affordable units. And we've seen rents increase, sometimes 300% since the pandemic. And those are private landlords doing that. So I would definitely say, everybody here could, probably name one person they know that maybe has a rental, and maybe just kind of telling them to give us a call, and we can explain the landlord partnership program that we have. We have a lot of monetary incentives for landlords, and the providers, the service providers that work with people and take them on as clients to get them housed or to get them into certain services, stay with these people. So landlords don't have to necessarily have the concern of they're just dumping somebody in my home and walking away. The service providers stay involved with people and try to get them stable before kind of decreasing any of those monetary or supportive services. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and the chairman had showed me where this data was already on one of our slides, but whatever. So are you talking about housing choice vouchers? You talking about what they used to call Section 8?
So there's that. There's also low-income tax credit and things like that that we don't have enough of, but we have some of those in our communities too.
Yeah. All right, so very quickly, I don't want to belabor the point, but very quickly, there's some misnomers about landlords not wanting to rent to housing choice vouchers, to accept a voucher because they think their property will could likely be abused and whatnot. But the way it works, and I work for Skyline Community Action.
Yes,
and
sir.
we administer the housing choice voucher program in 3 counties. A voucher recipient, it's very tough to get a voucher to start with, okay?
Yes.
And once you do get a voucher, you will walk a pristine line, because if you lose that voucher because of an inspection or because you abused the property and the landlord reports it to HUD, you will lose your voucher, and now you got to start all over. We've got 800 people on our waiting list right now for vouchers. So I just want to say that landlords that have this misconception that their properties are likely to get abused is not true, because these folks, they're going to walk a fine line because they
Correct.
don't want to lose it.
Correct,
Okay?
correct.
What was our number last year?
The number last year was 14.
14, so we're up 5.
Yes, but there were, like, as I said, there were some of those that were staying on couches and things that we don't know exactly what their trajectory was in the last 4 months. I would also just like to say, thank you to the support of Madison DSS, because as I was telling Mr. Weekly earlier, we were able to partner and work together and keep 2 families' children from coming into foster care due to their, housing situations. And so I think, again, in a county with the population the size of Madison, I think that's massive. And that just shows the partnership again.
We also have questions or comments? Ms. Pumphrey, you have anything to add?
We just appreciate the creativity of the team there to try to figure it out. And if we see people that are at risk of eviction, Mesa, Skyline Cap, Salvation Army do an amazing job locally to get creative, because, the best thing is for them not to become homeless. It's hard to recover.
Anyone else?
I just pulled up last year, so 14, and 9 of those unsheltered, 5 were labeled with friends and family.
Very interesting. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Captain McKnight, come down and tell us about an SRO grant award.
Good evening. So we wanted to actually present on all of our grants that we have been working on for this year. So this year, for this fiscal year, we applied for numerous grants. The continuation for the school resource officer, 2 new school resource officers. We did an equipment grant for the e-ticket system for our patrol. And then we applied for a burn grant for overtime pay for interdiction. On the next slide, you'll see we were approved for all except for the overtime grant. So we were awarded the continuation for Waverly Yao, and then the 2 new positions for primary school and the middle school. And of course, we already had the high school funded. So, and then we were also awarded the Burn Justice Equipment Grant, which is the e-ticket grant, and I'll talk about that here briefly. So the current SRO program, we have Deputy Mike Foster, county funded in the high school. We had Donald Dillon, he was grant funded in Waverly Yao. And then we had funded the middle school position, which had temporarily been transferred to patrol because we had to put a position in the academy when we had some changeover. So that was what the SRO program did look like and what it's going to look like now. So now we're going to have an SRO in each of the schools. It'll be a county-funded position in the high school, and then with approval, it'll be 3 grant-funded positions in the other 3 schools. So the match, when you see the match, all 3 SRO positions have a match requirement, and I just put in there, that's the state. Comes up with that number of our ability to pay. Madison's a little higher, just based on statistics and the data that they receive. So we're at a 47.46% match rate. So that's the percentage the county would have to pay for the 3 grant positions. So we have assigned personnel if approved. These personnel will be supervised under CID, which is not a change. In the high school will be Deputy John Polina. Deputy Jackie Pollard will be assigned to the middle school. Deputy Donald Dillon will remain in Waverly Yale. He will do our DARE program. And then we have Deputy Travis McDaniel that will be assigned to the primary school. The financial breakdown of what the grants, and thank you, Jennifer, for kind of helping us with this part. So this is what the totality of what the grants will look like, county funded. The amount of total county funded needed will be $206,312. However, most of that is already funded. That's just the breakdown, including the positions that we were already paying for. And then Jennifer, she says, it's, I guess she can explain it better if you have questions. There's going to be no net impact to the 25 approved budget. It'll be no change there. There'll just be an additional appropriation of $83,000. And that'll
Please
cover all
explain.
4 schools.
The additional revenues, when we budgeted for the SRO, excuse me, when we budgeted for the SRO position, we only budgeted for 1, and we budgeted at a lesser amount for that 1. So now, basically, we would be doing a supplemental appropriation to add the additional revenues that we would receive for these, from these grants, and the additional expenditure of 83. So it would be a net 0, more revenue, more expenses of about 83,000 for fiscal year 25.
Good.
How long do the grants last?
I'll let Captain McKnight explain.
So the grants are, they're continuations. The newer grants are, they do it years alphabetically. So the 2 new positions are year A. Donald Dillon's grant is year 5, so he's in E, but they'll restart with a new application probably in 2 years with start over with A. So A through C is almost a guaranteed continuation, but if we can show the need, they'll continue it as long as we need it. We just have to stay on top of it and continue the, we have to provide statistics and data every 3 months. We have to do quarterly reports, and if we meet that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't continue to get them. Yeah, there's a huge push. These grants, they put out, I think there were several thousand positions they funded this year.
Any other questions or comments? Please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to see that the grants came through, and it does bump up some more of our county spending, but I can't think of a higher priority than to protect those kids in the schools. Plus the mentoring component of this.
Thank you for applying. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Please.
So the additional grant that we were just granted is the Burn Justice Assistance Equipment Grant, and we applied for the e-ticket program. The e-ticket is going to bring efficiency to the county. All the data from this e-ticket will transfer straight to our RMS system and straight to the courts. It will eliminate countless hours for our clerks as well as our records department of entry, and it minimizes the amount of a traffic stop from about 10 to 11 minutes to 3 to 4 minutes. It's just an electronic system for ticket writing versus sitting on the side of the road handwriting. With usually 2 to 3 deputies on the road, this will clear them up from their traffic stops to allow them to continue to do their other positions. So it's just efficiency. And on this grant, we were approved for, next slide, the turnkey program to get initiated was $53,000, a little over that. We received the full amount of funding. So for this year, there will be $0 from the county requested. There was a 25% match requirement, but their match, they did not ask for it in cash. We could have done it in kind, which is what we chose to do. So there would be no cash match. So we just have to designate a certain amount of man hours, which is going to look like about 1,100 man hours, in the amount of $1,700, which just the use and the maintenance of that will work for that. So we just have to be able to show that in the grant that we are doing that. There is a yearly maintenance fee, if that's something we continue to do, of approximately $21,000. We're going to keep track of all the statistics, the timing and the data to show how the efficiency is beneficial to us. Our records clerk spends several hours a day entering tickets. Those hours each day will be cleared up. The clerks in turn also at the courts have to enter those tickets. They no longer have to do so. Additionally, the state police went to the same program. So it'll be a consistency with Madison County. So the clerks will be working off the same system for all the agencies that they work with. So overview, we've applied for 5 grants. We were awarded 4. The total amount of grants that we have been awarded in the last year and a half is over $400,000. This is just state grants. We additionally have we've been awarded $450,000. As you all know, I've been working closely with Brian. We're in the final stages of that application to get the bi-directional amplifiers for the school. That money's already been awarded. We just have to finish all the steps, which hopefully in the next week that'll be concluded. We've been working with Spanberger's office for next year's COPS grant, and they are helping us to get a customized and RV command post for unified command for all emergency services for next year. It'll also be a turnkey system. So we are in the process of starting that as well, and they're very optimistic that grant will come through for next year. So on top of the DCJS grants, we're looking at almost $1 million in federal grants that we're in the process.
Yeah, Captain McKnight, would you tell the public what the bi-directional amplifiers in the schools, what does that do for us?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Gordon over here. I don't mind doing the writing. He's better at the...
At the
Okay, so
talking.
The bidirectional amplifier is basically an extension of the antenna system to the interior of the building. It's a reverse antenna. You picture an antenna on a building going up to capture waves to bring into it. This is an antenna on the interior of the building to get the signals back out. So if we have responders inside of the school that can't talk because of dB loss or whatever it is, they can navigate onto that, get to the roof, and then get out.
Thank you.
And to speak on that, we just did a training exercise this last weekend or 2 weekends ago in the school. It was a 2-day exercise with emergency services. We all did active shooter training, and we had to yell down the halls at each other because there was absolutely no service whatsoever. Radios were not getting out, cell phones were not working, so there's no communication. So just seeing how those scenarios would play out with no communication, it definitely highlighted the need for the system.
Any other questions, comments for Captain McKnight? Thank you very much. Keep applying. All right. All right, old business, new IT position. Come on down and talk to us, Mr. Livingston.
Good evening, everyone. So, what we're asking for is to increase the staffing of the IT department for an entry-level information technology technician. And as it says in this, and you guys have probably already read, over the last 3 or 4 years, the cost of doing business with third-party vendors has went up from $55,000 to $155 to $145 an hour. And it's been steady. I don't think it's going to level off. I think that over the next couple of years, you'll probably be looking at more like $250 an hour, maybe. That's maybe more, maybe a little less, but the way that it's been increasing, if you follow the trend, then that's what's going to happen. We're going to end up spending a lot more money than we have been. Not only that, our third-party vendor right now, Magna 5, has changed and been bought, and they're going through a bunch of changes too. So their new company is, we don't get no freebies, we don't get no, hey, call me up and tell me what that did no more. It's everything is tracked, everything's charged for us. We have to watch those charges because we're getting a lot more of them than we were with the new company.
What's the new company called?
Magna 5.
No, they didn't, they just got, you said they just got acquired. It was A&S, but Magnified, they took over
Yeah. I'm
like a
sorry.
year and a half ago, 2 years
Yeah,
ago?
Magnified took over.
Yeah,
A&S,
all right, there you
but-
go. All right,
And then, in the last year, they went through all kinds of changes. We've
Yeah.
lost our main number one, Christina Garrison, she left. And we're getting another person, we're gonna meet them in July, go over everything about our contract down to the wire. But, the point is, we really need to get, this department, adequate, at least with the 3 people in it, to where we have redundancy. And Mr. Jewett, I look at it like a RAID array. You got 3 drives at active one of them goes away, the other 2 pick up the slack, and then the other drive, the new drive gets put in, they all start working together again, and you're never really down, you're never really losing nothing. You might slow down, you might take longer to get things done. With that said, also, I will be able to dedicate a lot more of my time to working on projects with the department heads. I see things out there not all the time, but periodically, where folks are doing things not as good as they could be doing things because they don't understand the technology available. And we frankly haven't had time to sit down and go with them. The EMS department's got this new narcotics thing coming in, and they're gonna need help with that. You know, we got the renovations coming down here. There's a lot of top-down project overseeing that I can be doing now to help people find the right and optimal solution, which is what a manager directors type person should be doing versus, having to help pick up the pieces on a broken printer or something like that. So it would free me up for that, in addition to helping the staff. It also is going to provide room for Alan to grow. Not only will he be learning more sysadmin and putting his time into more system administration with our VM servers, with our network, with our telephone system, with our new PA system. There's a whole plethora of things that Alan will also be able to step up and put more time into. I would say that down the road, in a year or so, once we have brought this person in, got them trained up, they're handling a lot of the break fix. Alan is now concentrating on more of the sysadmin, the network administration, that we can then revisit our contract with Magna 5. And I would anticipate that we would be able to cut back a portion of the duties that they're doing. Not everything all at once. We will need at least we could get them off the contract and we could call them up for piecework. All right, our servers are down. We don't have a week to figure this out. Help. That sort of stuff could happen in a time crunch. So we may, down the road, you'll still need some. Now, in the event that things get 3 or 4 years down the road and you're now paying even more for that sort of service, it might justify at that point bringing in a high-end system administrator. And as far as succession goes, I, see this as also a step in that direction. In a year, say that Alan leaves, or I leave, or anybody leaves, you now have 2 other people in place to keep things going. And that pretty much gives us a solid base, I think, to not only grow, but to provide the service in an appropriate and timely manner. Instead of waiting 4 hours for somebody on the phone to call you back when your printer broke or something like that, you need to work. Another thing that we've been talking to Mr. Jewett about is the amount of time that folks lose waiting on computer problems. My computer's too old, it needs to be upgraded, it's slow. We lose time. Someone gets to the point to where they think, okay, my computer's gonna boot, I'm going to get coffee, I'm coming back in 8 minutes, and okay, it's almost done. That's totally unacceptable. And we need to be able to identify that stuff and be proactive and find out who's having that happen to them. Without just going to work another problem, whether you show up and they're going, my computer runs like a dog. It'd be better to have a proactive approach to that. So it gives us the opportunity to become a more proficient, more self-reliant, and redundant department. And I just recommend that you guys approve this position. I could go over some of the savings. I'll go briefly over some of the savings. I'm not sure it's in here. But we did a calculation of over a month of how many tickets we ran for the network, how many tickets we ran for server, how many tickets we ran for desktop. And if you're looking at $145 an hour, we over a year, we're going to save about $40,000 or $45,000, and I can get those numbers if they're not in. Yeah, there they are right there. We can save a lot of money. I mean, this position pretty much, if we continue to keep doing what we're doing, we don't call Magnify for any of these problems anymore. The only time we call them is we're having a serious outage, or we're having some serious sort of problem, and we wouldn't even do that if we had time to go work on it. But, you know, when the county's down or somebody can't work, we can't wait around while we train. So I checked with Lita, looked at her costs, not Lita personally, but I looked at her costs for this. They pay $4,500 a year to maintain, manage, and their PA system, their streaming, all of that. We do that. We don't need nobody to do that for us. Now, we've got all of our, we might have a microphone break or something like that, but we can piecemeal any sort of assistance we need. So we're saving that there also. So the more we'd have time to free up to go do all these different tasks upon us, Tyler, Laserfish, all the ERP stuff, we're doing all that now. So we will be able to grow, we will be able to provide better service, and we will be redundant in the event that we have a change in staffing. Any
You're
questions?
thinking based on just summing up, this page is on the board, we've got about 33K worth of savings by having this additional position.
Well, not so much the additional position. That's what we've done up till now. The next position will be hopefully freeing us up to take on more system administration duties. It will. More networking, and then when we come around in a year or so to redo our contract with Magna 5, we should be able to get savings by scaling that back.
What's our retainer with Magna 5 currently?
It's yearly.
Mr. Warren, do you have any idea what we're paying Magna 5? Yeah, annually. All right, keep going, Livingston.
But that's where we're going to see savings.
All right.
And also, with the way that the cost of everything continues to go up exponentially, we need to get in-house, and we need to get in-house kind of quick and start doing more of this. I mean, it's going to get out of control in the next few years. I mean, there's other stuff coming along, too, that may help us that I've been looking into with you hear about AI and the different ways that AI can assist you to speed up resolution to actual problems on a computer and things of that nature. When an AI robot is really just code. It's code. In these companies, I've already talked to Dell about using some of their AI features to where you do not need human intervention in the event that you have some problems. I mean, you get a circuitry board goes out or something, you can't avoid it. Performance problems and things of that nature, we're just cracking the ice on that, but we will have more time to do that sort of thing too.
Mr. Chairman, I looked
Yes,
it up.
ma'am.
We put 149,000
There you go.
in the budget.
Thank you.
And one thing to remember about that 149 is that all of our licensing, everything you do on a Microsoft server, on a VM server, on a Fortnite switch, everything that you're doing and those sort of things comes with licensing and costs and support. So they do have good support levels that we'll be able to utilize, but that'll always be a cost. It doesn't matter whether we're doing it, Magnify's doing it, or whatever, whoever's doing it, we would have to break that number down to figure out exactly And we probably could get that from Magna 5 in a couple weeks when they come up in July. They're coming up in July, and they're going to get, anybody, management wants to come and sit with them, ask any questions, and get a good, get everything you ever wanted to know about them answered. That'll be the time. But as far as the licensing goes, that's always going to be a cost. So you could probably take a 20 or 25 grand off the top of that and put it towards Office 365 licensing. But where we will save is support and taking that stuff in-house for ourselves.
So we can tell how much support they've given us, though. Is that right?
I'm sorry, sir?
I'm sorry. They can tell how much, you can find out how much support we've paid for them?
We don't have, I'm sure we could, but at this point, the only thing I've done so far is went out and did a monthly average and then multiplied it by 12.
That included all the licenses and the?
No.
Oh, it didn't? Okay.
No, and that's not really, anybody could do that. Say that we did change our relationship with Magna 5, we could go with, not anybody, but another third-party developer like we've talked about, CDW. There's groups of them out there that are resellers. We can't go to Microsoft and buy a Microsoft license. We can't go to VM and buy their license. We have to go through their henchmen in the middle. So they get a little slice of that pie too. But that's always going to be a cost, no matter who is doing your IT.
I'm just trying to get to the point where
Yeah.
we have a salary for a new employee. Is that going to be covered fully or from the savings from Magna 5?
Oh.
Eventually, yeah, that's the goal.
Ms. Warren, you have some numbers for us?
Are we talking about the breakdown between the subscriptions that we
Yes,
pay
ma'am.
and the labor?
That's correct.
I'm looking at their spreadsheet now. Looks like renewals.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, there's a breakdown. Let's see. Managed services, which is, I think, what we're looking for the work that you guys do, or that they do for you, $61,956. And then there's a line item called Managed Prevention, Logging and Compliance Services. That totals $19,080. Everything else in that $145,000 is subscription renewals. And so I'm going to round it, $62,000 and $19,000 for managed services per
That's-
year.
That's pretty close. I mean, it's not this particular position, but if that's our hurdle, if that's the breakdown on that, you know, after we get this other person in here and we get down the road a year, you know, you could use part of that. Not much more than that, you'll get a decent administrator in there.
Would you like for me to read the definition of managed service?
Yes,
what they
please.
do?
Yes, please.
It covers network servers, switches, and desktops for patching, including servers for desktops for patching, tablets at EMS, firewalls, physical services, SAN, switch routers. It includes services for 3 firewalls and 9 virtual servers in M365 environment.
All right. Jim knows exactly what she just told everybody, and I'm hoping that you and Alan also do.
We do.
Without going into, and please don't go into detail on this, of those things she just listed as managed services, what do you think percentage-wise, roughly, that we'll be able to handle in-house?
Immediately or
Over the first year?
over the first year?
You think could we crush 50% of that?
That would be struggling.
Yeah, all right.
Only because we'd need a little bit more time getting the person in here, seeing how long it's gonna take us to get to that balance
Yeah, is that right?
with
The
support.
first year's gonna be a lower percentage to get
Sure.
everything ramped up.
Okay.
So I'm saying 10-15% in year one maybe.
All right.
Yes.
And then it would accelerate over time.
That's fine. Okay. All right, thank you.
But that's not as big a hurdle as I thought, when you break it down like that, Miss Jennifer. Alan said he's got some input on that, if y'all don't have any more questions.
Oh, yeah, we'll come up with some. Go ahead, Alan, throw in your 2 cents.
Just for the first year, a lot of it's going to depend on the candidate that we bring in. I've kept detailed notes of everything I do for the level 1 stuff. I don't think training them would be immensely difficult or take a long time. So I imagine within that first year, give us 6 months, we could probably have them up to snuff on at least all the level 1 stuff. So it's not that the level 1 duties are difficult, it's that they are time consuming, and my addition to basically Bruce's covering of everything is we've essentially reached a bottleneck point. With only 2 employees, we're limited on the amount of manpower that we have and the services that we can provide in an efficient manner. So if we're unable to perform something in a timely manner, our only option is either we put it off for a long time, essentially. People probably remember me putting out the password policy update. We've just been swamped with stuff, the AV system. I've beaten down Intune. We're almost ready to go live with that, but stuff gets kicked to the back burner. That's essentially where we're at right now. It's either we delve into this, we get another person, we provide more efficient, timely service, or we kick that over to ANS/Magnified. So we can do it. We're not drowning at this point, but we have reached a bottleneck point. We're providing what we can. We'd like to do more.
Thank you. All right. All right, you have comments as well about this?
I would just say what you have on your screen, so what you done last year through your budget, you set up you did add a person, you added Mr. Berry, but you also added a tiered approach. So System Admin 1, System Admin 2, so there's growth within the department. I think this is kind of reflective of seeing your fruits of your labor, if you will, from your decisions last year. There are some things, and I can't speak to it the way IT or Mr. Druitt can, but I know there are things that we've taken in-house, phone directories, things like that, that we were paying $75 or $100 or something each pop for folks. There's a managed service, and the way that Magnify works, and it used to be ANS, and it'd be a good time to revisit, make sure our managed services is the same. There are certain things that's included in there. If you go outside of that realm, say you call them and network's down, that's probably a bad example because it's within that service. But if it wasn't in that service, then there's a time and material rate that exists outside that contract. So that whole 149 number, $149,000 number that Ms. Warren gave you would be encompassing of, bless you, managed services plus what we have expended. From my point of view, what I've seen, some things that are added, so we've added the ERP systems. There's a lot of time requiring for that. I think it's important for that growth that they can have someone monitoring that more regularly. I can tell you when I hear quickly is when our finance and our treasurer commissioner departments are down because the system's down. And generally the way those offices work, if we're down longer than 4 hours, we don't feel like there's a fix coming that day, those offices close, which means it's unavailable for you, it's unavailable for the public. So the ERP is something that has gave more tasking of our time. Getting Bruce to that hierarchy level, or at least being able to do more within that department, whether it's Bruce or he delegates it down, there are things that I'm concerned that we need to address, and we're trying to do that through steps. For cybersecurity, we need to really have some policies and develop that and make sure we're bulletproof on that. That's just one area. So those are policy driven. Network diagrams and things. Do we have up to date? Do we understand our system? And those are things that they would be handing off to the next new person that starts. Because if you so choose to approve this position, and to be clear, you approved it during budget, put it in contingency, and have us bring it back for your consideration if you want to fully go ahead and fund it and hire for it. But at that time, again, what we talked about is trying to add in a person. Does it clear out some of those things, those concerns of cybersecurity and networking and things that we need to be doing? Are we going to move more cloud-based? Or are we going to be doing more service? I guess that's prim on site is the language that y'all use. So there are some things beyond what you see on the screen that I think adding that additional body that can do. We didn't talk about your ticket system. It may be helpful at some point to, if you can dump that into a report, send that to all board members. The problem with some of that is it's only as good if we are entering tickets, if staff are entering tickets, so you can see their workload. But a lot of that is being handled mainly by Alan right now. Ticket comes in, they'll do the work, but they go back and enter it, so.
What was the number we put in contingency for this position?
I think it's around 73K, that's benefits and all.
Yeah, there you go. Jim, what clarity would you like to add to this?
First of all, Jonathan, the spreadsheet that I emailed you today, the updated spreadsheet, could you bring that up on the screen? And I passed out hard copies to the other supervisors.
This efficiency
Yeah,
thing.
tell us.
This is another aspect of costs, and this is intangible costs, and unfortunately, organizations tend to ignore this at their ultimate peril. So what I wanted to do, because this reinforces the contention by Mr. Livingston, that we need more attention paid to overall assessment and management of IT. When I talk about this intangible, we're talking about the loss of operational efficiency due to inadequate IT support or substandard IT support. And I'm not implying that it's substandard, but there's always room for improvement. But what I did with this, as it's coming up, I took the budget, the 25 budget, and I took the operational categories. I excluded social services because it's got a bunch of stuff all lumped together, and it didn't have time to really break it out. But this is just a general what-if scenario. And I took the total cost, the total operational hours per year. For example, for the regular operating departments, that's based on a 40-hour work week, that's 2,080 hours a year. For public safety, which runs 24/7, that's 8736 hours a year. And then you can see that the cost per hour to the county for these operations, regular operations is a little over $3,300 an hour, public safety a little over $1,000 an hour that we're spending every hour of every day of the year. And if you look at that, and you look over there on the right where I have 3 scenarios for inefficiencies, I have a 0.1% inefficiency, a 0.5 of 1% inefficiency, and a 1% inefficiency. And how that equates to seconds per day per person and minutes per day per person. And if you look at the 1% inefficiency, that's almost 5 minutes a day. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's very easy to reach that, particularly if you have a slow-booting computer. You have a network slowdown during peak hours, which I understand we frequently experience. If you have a network outage, which causes us to have to shut down departments for half a day, which we experience occasionally, my guess is that we're probably somewhere closer to 2 to 3% inefficiency in our actual operations. But even at 1% inefficiency, if you go down there to that lower right cell, and I think that's cell 20, F20? Yeah, F20 down there, the very last one right there, down below it. If you're at a 1% inefficiency across these departments, that's a cost of $162,907 in lost productivity. Now, the contention can be, well, yeah, but this is not really extra expenditure. Well, eventually it will be, because what's going to happen is somebody's going to come back and say, well, gee, we just can't get the work done in our department. Please give us another $100,000 position. You'll have more operational mistakes, and then probably the most damning thing will be is that if citizens experience substandard service, that's going to be their impression of how we run the county. So these are, in my years of experience in IT, this is kind of something that people like to push under the rug and say, well, yeah, it really doesn't make any difference. But it makes a huge difference. And if we start factoring that in to having Bruce and Alan, who I really have a really good comment on him in just a moment, to allow them to improve these efficiencies, there's real money savings in the long term on this. And I think, as alluding to what Mr. Weekly said, I think our cybersecurity probably needs more attention. And the accelerating cost of our outsourcing, that's going to keep going up. It's going to go up exponentially because these folks are having the same trouble getting qualified technicians as anybody else, whether it's electrician, HVAC, IT. They're getting more expensive and more scarce. So we need to try to get away from outsourcing as much as possible and bring that in-house. One shout out to these guys, and I was really impressed with this. undertaking what we call knowledge management in operations, and this unfortunately is more the exception than the norm in IT, but they are documenting their problems. They're building a video library of when they have a problem and how they resolve it. And Alan actually spends the end of his day entering into the ticket system, which is a way to entering into it what happened, how it was resolved. So they're building a knowledge base that can be referenced in the future, either by them or another employee, to more quickly and effectively resolve problems. And that incidentally would also in the future be the basis of the AI data sets if we ever move to AI analytics. So, I mean, I was really impressed with that. Because that's something that takes time, and what happens is most organizations are like, well, we really don't have the time, we don't really need to do that. But it's short-sighted. So based upon, the accelerating outsourcing costs, the need for succession, because there's going to be a succession at some point in the near-distant future, near/distant future, and the fact that we need to maintain our operational efficiency, I think that I'd recommend that we go ahead and authorize this position.
Is that a motion?
That can be a motion.
Yeah, I'll second that, Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Yeah, I don't know. Your graph is interesting, Jim, in every way. And we shouldn't dive too deep into that. I've been kind of curious why we've been messing with this for so long. Technology, it's like the economic development that we're talking about. Everything's technology. Why there isn't accelerated costs that go right along with that, I would see, it just doesn't make any sense why there wouldn't be. I've seen too many times in government where we try to go and we say, well, we're adding this so that we can see savings in this. I'm looking at Miss McKnight because she was talking about the e-ticket program and saying all this staff, this will bring efficiency to that department. And my thought was, well, what's that person now going to be doing? Which I'm sure they have got plenty for that person to do. This is the same. It's going to cost us more money for several years if we can cut out some of the outsourcing of that so that services are more readily available here within us. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. I mean, from the get-go. Any other discussion?
Well, you've got a good team. These people
Absolutely.
are competent. They're not just
Absolutely.
adding people and hiding
Correct.
in the back room, which is IT people.
That's right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, let's go to some new business. Ms. Warren, talk to us about the human resource manager job description, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start out by saying, although this is a new position that I'm recommending to the board, it is not adding additional expense. It's actually a promotion for a current employee to this position. And I want to give a little background to the board. Ms. Tilly Struthers was hired in July 2010 and has grown significantly in her role over the last 14 years. She was originally hired as the payroll and human resource technician, performing once-a-month payroll, new hire paperwork, and assisting the finance director at the time in administering benefits. In November 2020, she formally moved into her current role as HR generalist, where she's been performing the twice-a-month payroll, sitting in on job interviews, sitting in on investigations, random drug screenings, processing workers' comp claims, property claims, liability claims, line of duty claims. She's been handling annual benefit renewals, administering the open enrollment for the county, setting up trainings, administering benefits, compensation board, conducting exit interviews, and maintaining job descriptions and classifications for the county. Since her career with the county began, Ms. Struthers has attended numerous HR and payroll seminars, and she also joined the professional organization called SHRM in 2018. That stands for Society of Human Resource Management. When I began working for the county in September of 22, I encouraged her to get her SHRM CP certification, which is the Society of Human Resource Management Certified Professional Certification, to continue to grow in her career. She's been studying actively the 4 different modules of this certification over the last year, and she's taking the exam sometime later this year. I'm recommending two things to the county. I'm recommending the new HR manager position based on where Ms. Struthers is today. And I believe she fully leads, plans, and manages all HR and payroll tasks for the county independently. And I have not once, since I started, had to lead or manage any of that. This new position would put her where she should be based on her job duties as well as the responsibility she carries of managing and overseeing one of the major county administrative functions of HR and payroll. I do recommend leaving the HR generalist position as an open or an active position, maybe but not filling it right now, in case the county should ever need to hire support underneath Ms. Struthers if she were to be moved to the HR manager. However, I believe this position description should be refined in the future if we ever do need to fill that role. It could be a little bit lesser of a position and duties. And I talked to Jonathan earlier about the fact that right now HR is under finance. And if you look around at the other counties, human resources is a standalone department in most counties, even if it's a department of one. I feel like Tilly does come to me for some things that we need to discuss, like budgeting for payroll. However, she does also work alongside Jonathan a lot. I would make a recommendation for HR to be a formal department in the county, underneath the county administrator. And I would also make a recommendation for the HR manager position for Ms. Struthers to be promoted into based on everything I just mentioned. And I'll take any questions.
Anybody have questions on this?
Yeah, I do, right. So, the human resources, the last sentence, work is performed under the supervision of both the county administrator and finance director. I think that should be changed.
I would
Okay.
agree now,
Okay.
now, because when I originally wrote this, I didn't even think about the standalone department.
Yeah.
However, she does work alongside me for budget reasons, but
Yeah.
other than that, I think this direct supervision would be under the county administrator.
Right, yeah, I mean, everybody needs a direct report. You can't be, reporting to two people, so.
agree.
Okay, all right, fine. That, and I had one tiny little clerical thing here. Employee onboarding and offboarding, very first sentence, it says 1-9, I'm sure that's I-9.
Is it under essential functions?
Under employee onboarding and
Get to the
offboarding.
next page.
General work, supervisor.
Oh, I see it. I
First
see-
line.
Essential
I see it.
functions,
Verifying
second page.
I-9 documentation.
Yeah, I-9.
Yeah, it should be I-9, correct.
Yeah. But yeah,
All right.
that's important.
Yeah, below it's correct, it
It
looks
is,
like, but
yeah.
up above
The
it's
next
not.
paragraph's
Thank
got
you for
I-9.
catching that.
All right, it sounds like we've got
Yeah.
3 different recommendations here. We've got to make HR its own formal department, to promote or to have this human resource manager position, and to promote our current HR generalist, Tilly Struthers, into this role. What do you all think? What do you all want to do?
I think, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the board, didn't we have her in this HR management position in the study we did?
That's correct.
Okay, so-
We did plan for that possibly happening, a promotion for her, so we put in the budget for
Okay,
that.
yeah, I thought we did.
So the budget, if I may, because I
Please,
think it'd
by all
be remiss
means.
without me making a comment. Yes, so during the compensation study and the budget process, we talked for that. We kind of plan, and to Ms. Warren's point, not looking to backfill. When you create job description or position, it gives you that latitude. In this case, we are creating a job description and asking to elevate, but not backfill, just keep that job description, so if you later need to do that. The things that she's doing now or has been doing is really in here. So I look at this more of a formal approach, and really taking a stride to recognize that. This person does work very independently. Obviously with feedback, whether it touches finance, whether it touches county administration, whether it touches legal. There's a time, we try to make that less, but there are times that touches legal. So I think without a doubt, I can stand by and say that individual is doing that work. It's really, hey, we need to create this, as weird as that can sound to some, to really
Recognize it,
recognize
yeah.
the level that they are currently performing.
I'd like to add one more thing. I really try hard to help people grow in their career, and I do believe that some of the things that I added into the HR manager role about leading certain other things and working alongside the executive team on certain strategic planning, I really think those type of discussions, having her enter into them, will really help her.
Yep.
And we, just one more plug, Kim didn't pay me to say this, but we're already doing the cross-training and trying to build off what we already have. So for example, I know Ms. Struthers and Ms. Turner work together, so that onboarding, offboarding process, I don't want to say a lot of times, but there are times that gets, depending on if there's leave or just workload, Kim helps in that too. So we're all about, where we can help and where's growth, time, efficiency. So I do think it shows that the team is resilient and kind of give you a little more further confidence of, if we're adding this person, what are we doing? We're trying to not have to add a person behind. We realize the county may grow at some time, but we're trying to utilize excellent folks we have internal to help offload some of that stuff that Ms. Struthers is currently working on, such as onboard and offboard.
All right. Other comments, thoughts? Motion. What do y'all think? Three things in front of us.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we create the HR manager position, stand up the HR Human Resources as its own department, and promote Tilly Struthers into that HR management position.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Thank you very much.
Thank Tilly for her hard work. I mean, she just stands up every time.
We couldn't do it without her.
Absolutely. All right, now more exciting stuff. Fuel card and PIN policy and procedures. Ms. Warren?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I started with the county, we didn't really have a formal program documentation. And so what I've done is, I did some research on some other counties' fuel card language and program and procedures, and put together what I thought was an acceptable overview of the program, kind of a definition and giving roles and responsibilities. We would basically have a fuel card department custodian. Right now, the fuel cards are handled between Michelle and Angie. And this really gives it more of a formal roles and responsibilities for each of those folks to how to handle fuel card requests that come in from departments, and a way to also make sure that we have checks and balances in place through our smart sheet forms. We did create a formal smart sheet form for people to request if they have a fuel card and PIN request, if they have an addition or a change for a driver. A PIN number needs to be changed, or if they need to report their card lost or stolen. We have now a form that we use, and all of those procedures are spelled out in this document. And there's also a fuel card, a contract administrator, which would be a formal position between myself and Michelle and Angie. So it's basically three of us involved in the whole fuel card program process for checks and balances. And then the other part of this document really just talks more about, there's a form, a user agreement that we would ask for personnel to read over and sign. It's the very last page of this document. If you want to go down to that, I think you're on that now. And anytime we issue a fuel card, we would ask them to review and sign off on this document, agreeing to these 8 items. Which I think is important when you are issued a county fuel card. So it really just is formalizing the program that we already have in place, giving a little more guidance, and basically spelling out the roles and the responsibilities of us in the accounting department and what we're supposed to be doing and how the procedures work for the request through Smartsheet. I did have this fuel card program draft document reviewed by our county administrator first, and then by our team. And both Mr. Weekly, Angie, and Michelle, they didn't have any major changes to the document. We just had a few little changes. So my recommendation is to formalize our fuel card program through this document.
Mr. Weekly, anything to add?
No, I appreciate the kind of pulling the program together. I mean, we've had fuel cards for a long time, and I know those receipts can be painful, but they have to be matched up. But now a lot of things are going electronically, so you have a fuel report. As someone that used to manage utility, I like getting that. I like to know, where's fuel and are there big changes, not only, in cost of fuel, because that we pay different than what you and I regularly go to the pump. But it's a good program. It's standardized. I think we've looked at other things. I don't mean to get ahead of myself, either past or future, things, whether it's credit card policies, cell phones, things that need to be more refined. So it's fairness for expectations, how to handle those things that are in your possession. That's what this policy is trying to spend on, because you are entrusting people with fuel that ultimately comes out of the county's coffers.
And if the board does approve this policy, my thought would be to obviously distribute it to anyone who has a fuel card and ask them to sign the agreement.
All right, questions, thoughts, comments? No.
So, Hannah, have you reviewed this policy? Is there any? So is there?
Yeah, all right.
Anything, let's see.
All right.
So do you all feel like Hannah should look at it, or this is basically just stating what we're doing now and have been doing forever?
It's more procedural than
Just-
anything.
okay.
There are some policies in here that we could have Hannon review, but
Why don't we?
okay, that's fine.
Why don't we get Hannon to
No
review
rush.
this? I'm sure he will find nothing. And then we can take this up at the next meeting as an action item.
Just basically because, especially with that last page where they're whoops, let me go back. They're signing an agreement. Okay, that's the only reason I would feel more comfortable if Hannah just took a look at it, because they're signing an agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
all
will
right,
have him review it, and then we'll bring it to the next meeting.
Okay.
How many fuel cards do we have out right now? It's a lot.
I mean, just public safety alone, you could probably have, I don't know, 20 or 30 of those.
Do we add this agreement as an item as for employment?
I mean, it would be something if you're going to be issued one. So if it's
right.
issued up front or later on, maybe your duties require you to have a vehicle that has that. So that's really what they're trying to do, whether we're issuing you a cell phone, in this case it's fuel
Yeah,
card,
yeah,
but
yeah.
fuel pin or credit card, we want you to understand, like, what's the how are you supposed to be using that, and what's the responsibility or receipts or things of that nature, your driver pin. So you can call it condition of hire if you will, but it's really standard procedures of, we're entrusting you, it's classified, a fuel card is considered Madison County property, so whether you're getting a fuel card, credit card, cell phone,
Yeah.
we expect you to be responsible. But definitely, we'll push it over to Hannon, but really, want to let them know this is the policy, this is how proper use. You've seen the procedures, you understand. There's things, somebody leaves a receipt, we're not trying to flash out from you. You sign this thing, see you later, but it's really standardizing and making sure everyone's aware of the policy.
So one thing I didn't know, does the fuel card go with the vehicle or go with the person?
The fuel card goes with the vehicle?
Vehicle.
That's what I thought. Vehicle.
Each person has their own PIN number.
Yeah. But the fuel thing stays in the vehicle, or whatever?
Yeah, it should stay with the vehicle. You go up to the pump island, it's gonna
Yeah.
ask you for things such as your PIN number, your mileage. I think those are the two things they ask for.
Yeah, there's a couple things that we put in the smart sheet for people to fill out when they take a picture of their receipt. They enter mileage and things like that, and it goes into our system. I do think since we have time with this document, I will also pass this along to the public safety teams, just because I do think with the bulk of this being public safety, I'd like to get the leads of those two departments just to read it and see if they have any specific questions. Even though it's not really
Right.
we've been doing this, but I will get their feedback as well.
First meeting in July. Hannon, awesome. Very good. Anything else on this one?
No, sir.
All right, Ms. Warren, tell us about the budget appropriations.
In the packet, there are two resolution documents, and we do have a change for each of these documents that first we'll start with the resolution 2024-9 on the screen. The only change that we do need to make to this document, if you scroll down to I think you're there, you've highlighted it, thank you. I did not catch this. This was a carryover document. It says, whereas the Board of Supervisors desires to make a monthly appropriation for capital expenditures, that needs to be changed to annual appropriation for capital expenditures. The rest of this specific resolution, the numbers are there based on the budget. If we go to the next resolution, the recommendation on 2024-10, which is the appropriating the county operating budget, is to add that same language between the last two paragraphs. And that paragraph would state, whereas the Board of Supervisors desires to make an annual appropriation for the county operating expenditures. So we would add that between those two paragraphs so that that document and the first one are consistent with each other. But the numbers in both resolutions tie to the approved operating budget and capital budget. So I'm making a recommendation to approve with those changes.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, thoughts?
Just a quick question.
Please.
If we put that language in, particularly the operating budget resolution, that would not hinder us if we have to make supplemental emergency appropriations through the year?
No. Correct. Certainly would not.
So normally if we'll do a supplemental, it's unbudgeted, say revenue, say a grant, what we just talked, perfect example. That'll come in, you have to do a supplemental to bring that money over, so it wouldn't prohibit you. Even if you got into a budget amendment, which hopefully don't, that's anything over 1% of your overall budget requires a public hearing to do that. It would not prohibit you from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other thoughts? We do have Resolution 2024-9, which is the appropriation of the capital budget, and it's been recommended to have the change to annual. What would y'all like to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2024-9 with the changes as suggested.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we have Resolution 2024-10, which is the operating budget, with the addition of the language in between the second and third, or the last and next to last paragraphs, talking about the annual appropriation.
Uganda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2024-10
As recommended.
as recommended.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, opioid settlement participation, 2024-11. Mr. Weekly.
Yes, I'll have some comments, and I also want to give it an opportunity for Hannon, thank Hannon, he put together this resolution. As you may recall, the county was part of a settlement. We joined in the class action lawsuit for opioid some time ago. Those settlements were made. There were initial folks, part of that, Allergen, there were several others. Since that time, and occasionally, we had one last year, forgive me not recalling, but this one before you is considering whether the board wants to opt in to be part of the settlement for Kroger. And this is the process to do that. If you look to approve this resolution, the Opioid Abatement Authority has already sent me over a DocuSign, which basically just states Madison County, me signing on your behalf, is electing to opt into the settlement. It's my understanding, and Hannah can speak to this as well, any of the past ones we opt in, there hasn't been any further litigation. The litigation had already occurred. I'm just speaking of past experience. I don't anticipate any here, but this resolution would, essentially, you'd be authorizing me, if you pass this, to sign off on that opt-in form from OAA. Mr. Wright?
My understanding is they reached the settlement with Kroger back in March for $1.37 billion. It's a national settlement, and then the Virginia Attorney General's office is a part of this. And if we would be, as part of the MOU that was previously signed for opioid abatement, the funds would get allocated accordingly to all the Virginia municipalities.
All right. Questions, thoughts? What would y'all like to do with Resolution 2024-11?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2024-11 to participate in the opioid settlement with Kroger.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Grays Mountain Lodge, large-scale outdoor event permit and fireworks permit. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, and I appreciate Ms. Turner segregating. I mean, this does have a fireworks permit with it. You have many others to consider here tonight for fireworks, but since we had two applications for the same business, we wanted to put them together. So this has circulated around first response. The event itself, okay. The concern, and this would be for any other than fireworks, I'm going to speak to grades right now, but just in general, fireworks permit. Mr. Gordon and I have had some conversations. He's chatted up with our fire chief as well as, I believe, all first response, law enforcement, EMS in general. We are in a drought advisory. It doesn't take many of you to know that. You walk across your grass, it sounds like you're crunching on potato chips. So there's high concern if we don't get rain soon, what that may be. But other than that, the county doesn't take a position of disapproval. We would just ask you to have that caution. I know, Mr. Chairman, we spoke earlier. I don't know if there's a direction of the board. We certainly don't want to cancel anybody's permits, but the board could choose to pass or approve permit applications tonight, and we can wait on conditions. I think we went up to the day before last year, I believe it was, Brian, where we got the rain that was needed, and those events went off without incident. No other comment from staff, just that concern.
The conversation earlier was that if we are continuing in these drought conditions, where there is adverse risk for fireworks or just fires in general, my recommendation was, is Brian and Mr. Weekly, and they should call people and revoke the permits immediately. I don't think that's, everybody, excluding myself who's applying for this, pretty good actors. They're certainly not going to be the ones that are going to go act irresponsibly, especially if they get that phone call. People need to be aware. It's highly flammable out. Anybody have any issue with them calling and revoking these if we're in a bad way?
Whose call is it? Whose call would it be to say, we need to revoke this?
It would be, go ahead, Jonathan.
If You know, and definitely, if Hannon wants to weigh in on this, but you are the authoritative body. This is a permit, so it's different than ordinances, but you still are the authority in this matter. So it's simple, your direction, you only meet twice or 3 times a month unless you call a special meeting, so your directive or your action would be carried out by the directive. So if you direct me or Mr. Gordon or both to do so, that is the action of the board that we would take. Let me, if I may, Brian, is there any more thoughts you may have on this? I know we talked about hyperreach or maybe some other things, because I just want to be clear, we are not, look, we realize it's 4th of July. We realize there's a lot of money spent by whether it's businesses or individuals for these. I love seeing them, but there, I think you talked about hyperreach, maybe some other ideas.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways we could do it. We could call back the applicants and do it that way, but we're also being realistic here. If you drive across the countryside on the 4th of July, there's more than 9 fireworks shows, and it's pretty obvious by looking at the skyline. Hyperreach would certainly reach most of those. I've been paying pretty close attention to the Keach-Byram Drought Index, which is something that the forestry departments and forest services use to measure how readily and easily fire will burn. It's Virginia in the middle of July. Humidity's high, it's not going to burn like it did last fall. I will say that right now. With that being said, a hayfield will burn. Grasses will burn. The mountain will burn. It just won't burn as readily. And it's quite as aggressively as it did last fall. So I don't want to scare anybody doing that. Nobody wants to shut down fireworks. But also, we have one fire department in Madison with neighbors having the exact same problems that we have, very similar to March 20th. And we knew we couldn't get fire apparatus into the county to help that day either. So that's what we're trying to avoid, if it comes to that. They're calling for stormy weather tomorrow night there, so better than 50% chance 5 out of the next 6 days. This may be a moot point, and I hope it is.
So I guess what would happen, somebody would talk to you, and then you, okay.
That's right. What's my title?
Director of Emergency Communications.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry,
that's
Director of
So,
Emergency
yeah,
Management.
exactly, it's,
Yeah.
I think that's where it is. If y'all don't have any, we have people in place that know certainly more than I do, and I take their recommendations pretty seriously, as I'm sure everybody here does. We all think about the Grays Mountain Lodge, large-scale outdoor event permit and fireworks permit. Thank you, Brian.
I move to approve it, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I'd like to abstain from, I'd assume y'all are going to do these as 4 applications with the one we added at the agenda, and the Nick Fisher fireworks permit. I'd like to abstain from this. And Carter, you mind?
Yeah, that's fine. So we have, is there any reason the board or Jonathan or Mr. Wright, y'all, any reason why we can't approve all 4 of these at one time?
I don't think so. I just want to add for clarity, for the board knows this, but for the public, the application you added as 12D, we received that at Friday, like at 7 PM. And we have looked at it, but it's the reason why I didn't want it in your packet. But we reviewed it, looked at it, same criteria. I just want to let the public know why that exists now and not in the packet.
Right. So Brian, Troy, y'all have seen all of these? Okay, very well.
And no, to your question, no issues with passing them all at once. We'll just have separate votes. Does that make sense? Or you're abstaining on all?
From the whole thing, yeah.
No problem.
All right, so gentlemen, is there any further discussion on any of these fireworks permits? So we entertain a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we approve the 4 fireworks permit requests as presented.
Second.
Very well, we have a motion and a second to approve the 4 fireworks permits included on the agenda. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Turner, tell us about board and committee updates.
Alrighty, so as you all may know, because we've discussed it before, The Dramana Community College Board Representative for Madison County, Miss Berry, her term expires at the end of this month, and she's not eligible to be reappointed, sadly. She did want to, so she has reached out, and so is the county per the board's request to advertise. We have received 4 applications, which are in the agenda packet. So staff are asking the board to consider those applications and let us know which direction you'd like us to go.
Would y'all like to interview these folks? Since there are multiple applicants? What about, yeah, Mr. Weekly?
I imagine you wouldn't want this at a joint meeting, so July 9th would be your next board meeting?
Yes, sir. Let's do it, do it at the end of the thing.
Okay.
That work for everybody?
4 o'clock meeting,
All right.
yeah.
And no recommendations from social
You can
services?
speak of, we did receive, who was that? Was that someone from the Germana board?
So the, one of the staff from Dramana Community College spoke with Miss Sarah Berry, who was the person who filled the role, and Miss Berry spoke with Miss Temple, who is one of the applicants, and Miss Berry highly recommends her due to her experience and her participation with the community. And that was Miss Berry's recommendation. But I don't know if Miss Berry's seen the other applicants or if that's just per conversation.
You were asking about DSS.
No, I was asking CPMT, and I thought FAP too. I think they both had people coming off, didn't they?
So those appointments are made by them, and then we're giving that information to approve.
Very good.
I have not received that information yet. I can reach back out to Ms. Woodward and see if they've received that information yet. But I do know that a lot of those positions are based on job positions. There are a few people from the community that are involved. I do know that one of those roles have been open for a while, but I can reach out to her again.
Let's interview them at the next meeting, see who we get. We know Ms. Berry has made a recommendation. Anything else on this one? All right, now discussion. Let's go to Leathers Lane. Mr. Weekly, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So several weeks ago, Mr. Wibby had sent around a very, I would say, non-descriptive but brief maintenance request per our position paper that is to be circulated. Sometimes the county circulates various things based on, I know there's some legal things of some folks not contacting others. Since that point, and Mr. Wibby has contacted, our office spoke with Kim several times. They said, oh, we're going to send in a revised request that was sent in on behalf of Miss Martins. I'm not sure who that is. I'm not tracking them as a landowner or a resident up there. But they did send that word file on behalf of Mr. Wibby that had maintenance requests and then clearly a bunch of other, I'm just going to clarify it as saying stuff or opinion of the individual. So you have that request that has to be circulated amongst the residents. If there can't be consensus, unanimous reached, that comes to you all for consideration. Mr. Gordon went up, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week, just to see what was in the right-of-way by Mr. Wibby's property. We did not see tillers or anything as such this time. The only thing remaining that I think was mentioned in a January prior cease and desist letter was the rose or Sharon's or whatever type of shrubbery exists in the right-of-way, in the grass area of the right-of-way. But that was the only thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gordon, that was seen as of late last week. So we have a request. Staff would encourage the board just give some direction. I know you've heard requests in the past. And, you know, I know we have some residents here tonight, if you want to take comment from them or however you want to proceed, but I want to make you aware that there was a request out there which we have correspondent email before the night, but get some direction from the board on this matter.
All right. We do have a request by Mr. Wigby. My only comment to his request before we start going into which way y'all want to go on this, I recommend that he doesn't use number 57 stone. I recommend that he uses crusher run, since it will pack and set up and not just roll away. That's my only comment on his application. We do have the Linoffs and the Kirby's. Here, would you all like to hear from the Linoffs and the Kirby's?
And Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, I got a
as you
comment,
call
so-
on the resident, I just want to clarify, so we are correcting our messaging. We sent out an email notification. I appreciate Kim at Pencil Muscat Driver send things out. Notifying the residents this was on the agenda tonight. We did not anticipate action. Of course, that's your purview. That does not rest solely on me, but that was the message that staff gave to the residents.
All right. Y'all want to hear from the Linoffs and the Kirby's?
Sure.
All right. I've got one comment that I'll make about this beforehand. I think everybody in Madison County understands the history of Leathers Lane. And if they don't, then there is plenty of reading material out there on Leathers Lane. I was talking to Cardi earlier this evening, and I'm in complete agreement with him. I'm looking towards the future of Leathers Lane, not rehashing everything under the sun. And I went up there and talked to Mr. Wigby on Sunday, and he tried to go down the history of Leathers Lane with me, and I had the same comment for him. Not interested in the history. I'm sorry that the request had what has been conceived as disparaging remarks about people, and I'm sure we'll hear about it. That is not what I'm reading at all from the request, and is actually the maintenance to the road is what I'm looking at. Anything other than that, I mean, the history of it, and we know there's protective orders, and everybody up there has security cameras on their houses, which I find just super, super sad in Madison County, and unfortunate, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on Leathers.
So I've got, so at this point, like going forward, our position paper on this issue has gone through many iterations, and I think we're in a pretty good spot. And I think that the process for doing any improvements to Leathers Lane is laid out, and the process is there, and you go through the process, and there you go. So that's where I am on it.
All right, I'll throw out my other recommendation on this before we go. I might as well just say it, and then y'all can comment on it and shoot it holes right through it. I think that we should allow Mr. Wigby to do the request on the road up to his lot. There's a caveat. We know there is poor behavior, let's just say on his part in some ways. I think for the next month, I would like to postpone any kind of decision on this for 30 days. And that means any kind of super negative antics up there by Mr. Wigby. And then we can vote on it in 30 days at the second meeting in July, and decide whether or not there are no negative actions by him at that time. I think this is the one little piece of leverage that we have to get neighbors being decent to each other. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I do think that there has to be good behavior. We're going to go up there and fix the road. And I'll throw in, the road is not in bad shape at all. It is very nice up there, and what a great place to be. All right.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, recently, Daryl has been doing a lot of yelling that is most inappropriate, and Stick will call me and hang the phone out the window and say, "You hear that?" It's like, well, yeah, I hear that, and it is not appropriate, and then, then you look at the flags that we've seen flying in the town of Madison that were also not appropriate, and we couldn't do anything about that, but just, yeah, I think he needs to act in a neighborly fashion for 30 days, because it's been more frequent here lately for whatever reason, and I don't know what that is. But I think maybe I do know what that is.
Yeah, you're next. Yes.
Okay.
You're next. All right, anybody else have anything? All right, who would like to go first? By all means, Ms. Lenoff. Oh, hold on, let us get you a microphone. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to clarify.
And you're Mrs. Kirby,
Kirby,
correct?
yes,
ma'am.
correct.
Thank you.
Clarify what you would expect him to do. I'd also like to clarify the fact that he has not removed his shrubs, but to let you know that there's a bench and the fence that's in front of his house is in what I believe is the right-of-way. The roadway. I understand that you all have surveyed, so you probably know better than I do exactly where the roadway starts and where his land begins.
This is the fence that's been there forever.
It hasn't been there
Forever.
forever. I have pictures of
I
it.
mean,
No.
come on.
It hasn't. No, it
right.
hasn't. Sorry, but it hasn't.
All right, fence and bench in the right of way. What else, Ms. Kirby?
That's all.
All right, Ms. Lenoff.
I'm Charlotte Lenoff, and I live on Leathers Lane. First, I was going to bring up the material being used, so I appreciate you bringing up the crush and run, because in your own position paper, it does state that any works to be done at VDOT standard, and VDOT standard for secondary roads is crush and run. I'm going to try not to rehash, believe me. I appreciate that.
Whatever. I'm on both.
And you're right, the road is in pretty good condition, except for maybe 2 spots that need a culvert, which you all did approve us to do, but Mr. Whidbey did derail that. But on a whole, yeah, the road is awesome. I mean, no problem at all. I agree with that. One of my concerns is that back in February, Mr. Jackson, you did state that you were not going to approve anything, any of Daryl Whidbey's requests, until he took care of the items that are on county property. I have listed, I guess y'all, I don't know if you're not reading them, but Mr. Whidbey also owns a secondary property it's undeveloped on down there going our way, where he has placed, I call them Fred Flintstone logs. They're just massive logs. They're all on county property. He's not done anything with that. He's got a massive dirt pile. He's not done anything with that. There is a T-stake that several times when this is a one-lane road, y'all know that, when we have to pass each other, that we've almost hit. And it's been put there as what we consider a booby trap that he had, I won't go in the back. But anyway, so that's still there. He continues to place large logs and branches out onto the edge of the road and into the road, but he removes them if he has something he wants approved, so, because he knows you all come up and visit here and there. So there are more items. You need to look at his second property as well, which is going close to our home. So I guess it's troublesome that the statement was made that you wouldn't approve anything until he takes care of this, but it sounds like to me you're going to approve it. There is another thing he put into, there's another thing he did put in at the very end of his request. is that, and he does this on a regular basis with y'all, is to request that he can do continual maintenance on the road. Way back when all these issues started, you all revoked everybody's license to do anything on the road without your permission. So I'm just going to state that I'm totally against that. The last thing I want to state is the fact that you all put out this second request from him using county email and resources that went way beyond a maintenance request. I know I spoke to Kim briefly, and I knew she knew I was not happy about it because my family's been brought into this. More specifically, my father who's deceased and does not have a say in this. I will say that the second part of his, it's not even a request, but his ranting was so full of untruths. And you all facilitated it by putting it out there. When all you had to do, I understand that you can't adjust someone else's, what they write, but you can send that maintenance request back to someone and say, you need to stick to the maintenance request only, and please resend it with no other additional comments other than what you want to do. Our neighborhood has healed unbelievably. Some of us that didn't get along so much, get along, just unbelievable. We have picnics together, we get together at each other's homes, so please understand that there is only one resource of problems up there, in animosity. The rest of us get along just fine. But I just found it troubling that you did disseminate that, and it went out to a lot of new people who have moved there. And it just brought up a lot of issues again. And you just allowed him when Mr. Jackson, many times when Mr. Whitby has been in here and he starts to get on this soapbox about everything, you cut him off. This didn't happen here. You put it out there. And I am not about to go neighbor to neighbor and try to defend things or rehash the 25 years living with this person up there. But anyway, that's pretty much about all I have to say. Just very disappointed if you approve it, since he has not followed the cease and desist, and he does continue issues. I know for any of us who have to pass this home on a daily basis, and like you said with Stick, and just so you know, some of the things that are being yelled are threats to specific neighbors. So looking at somebody as maybe just being a character in a neighborhood, it's not that way. When you live there every day and you have to put up with this, it's not so great.
I'm John Kirby, Sherry's husband. I just wanted to let you know that there was a court decision by Judge Bolton a few years back that delineated where levels, originally was called Grandview Avenue, later changed to Levels Lane. Those pins, those markers, those survey markers are still in the ground. I know that our property has a good many of them. I can go in and find them very easily just by looking at the survey map. So it'd be very easy, I think, to determine where it is, and it's as defined as being 50 feet wide, not a right of way, but the road is actually 50 feet wide. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. I think we can take a couple of the comments.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to see if there's any public comment online?
All right, yes. Brian, or somebody, look over there. Tracy, I can see, there's only two people. I do appreciate it, Hannah. Maybe we've added a couple. Nobody still. All right. All right. What? Well, we had hope. All right, I think Ms. Lenoff brings up a couple of good ones. I drove to the back of Leathers Lane the other day. I did not see this T-stake, but, we should look and see if there's a T-stake in the right-of-way. Is everybody okay with that? I think that,
It has orange tape hanging.
orange tape, where,
It's between Dick and Daryl's home.
all right,
But on the right.
let's look for that. Does that work? All right. The other one, I got a couple that are good points. The secondary property. I think that we should not consider the secondary property by Mr. Wigby, but just as residence. That'll work for everybody. The other one on continual maintenance. I'm against that. So that one we need to X off. The fence and the bench, I personally do not care about. They're in a tree line, and I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't say it that way. I do not. They've been there for a long time. It is apparent because they are rotting. Do you see any reason that we need to remove those from the right-of-way?
No, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with it. I don't see where that is an issue. I mean, talking about 50 foot, if we go in there, we need to go in with a bulldozer and clear everything, 50 feet?
I was up there for 45 minutes, and it was an interesting conversation. And then also, there was no traffic at all. And I know it's Sunday evening, people aren't out driving around, I got it. There's like, how many homes are up there? 10? 10, 12, 12, all right, so let's go with the greater, 12 or 13, and to 10 apparently. I don't see a whole lot of traffic there. I don't know, like, Daryl's got, and everybody's a bad offender. I don't know why we're having such issues passing, and driving in that grass, just spite, doesn't seem good, and him doing things, again, not good either. I don't care about the fence or the bench. Everybody fine with that? The only one that I do think is, what about sending this request back to Daryl, get him to remove the whole second half of that, because she's right, it's not germane to maintenance. Everybody here knows what's going on up there, knows the history of it. We good with that? So let's hope Daryl's on best behavior so that he can do some improvements to the road over, what is it 2 days or 3 days in his request? I think it's 3 days, unfortunately.
Are the trees gonna be allowed to remain on the very edge of the road that keep growing,
12 foot?
that you've told them to remove several times?
What do you want to do with these little maple trees that are,
And there's some,
So what, and the one, they're about as big as my little finger. You could mow over them,
they're not.
the ones I saw.
No, if you'd like to, I'd be happy to show them to you. He's planted a whole line of trees. Some are maybe this tall, some are probably about 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet.
They grow to 12 feet.
And he, in fact, they are not volunteers, he even had cages around them.
Okay, so what is the issue with that? I mean, trees produce oxygen and I kind of like to breathe, so what is the issue with that? If,
One planted on county property up against the edge of the road, they're probably maybe that far.
The restrictions ease ingress. and
Okay.
egress.
they're scraping your car when you go by?
Yeah, and Mr. Whitby has shifted the road over, so it is a narrow one-lane road. When those trees start getting larger, it's gonna be more of a problem. And I certainly don't expect that if we put in a request to remove them ourselves, that you're going to allow us to do that in front of
Yeah,
you.
well, I'd like to see which ones you're talking about,
all right,
so,
Can we meet then?
sure, yeah.
Let me know when, and I'll be happy to.
all
And
right.
I'll show you the T-sticks.
Yeah, Dustin,
So I have a question. If we did ask him to remove the trees, him doing the gravel to his house, I mean, are you guys okay with that? Crush and run. Yes,
Crush
that's
and run.
fine.
Crush and run.
I'm a country
All right.
boy, it's all gravel to me, I'm sorry.
I know, but.
So, But I mean, is that a middle ground where you guys are willing to meet, or? I'm asking the question. I'm not asking for you to say yes. I'm just asking the question, honest answer.
On the existing.
I understand,
No,
but the
that's not gonna
trees,
work.
Absolutely, and when it's laid, and he stops. Because, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. If he removes
All right.
everything that you
The only caveat that's gonna go there, the only caveat.
I'm just asking.
No,
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that's very reasonable, and I'm on the path, I agree with you, I like trees as well. The trees that I saw, that there's probably, I don't know, maybe there's a dozen of them. I think your pinky is much thicker than those trees, and I think we could pull those out with no tools needed, we just yank those out of the ground. Who cares? Let's pull that T-stake, and then you've got to walk about 50 feet and pull out like 10 or 11 trees that are they're pretty small. Is everybody okay with that? Tear out these 12.
It's Old County property.
Yes, I guess. Let's tear those out. All right, so we're going to tear out these 12 minuscule trees that are on the grassy area where a culvert used to be, right in front of Mr. Wigby's house, in front of the port and part of the bench. Is that where it is? No, not the bench. There's a handful of little trees. They're about yay tall, about this big. Yeah, there's like a dozen of them, maybe. Oh. All right.
Yeah,
So let's pull those 12 little trees up. Hopefully, Daryl will revise with the critiques that we have made to his proposal, and he'll be on good behavior for the next 30 or some odd days until our second meeting in July. And then we will determine whether or not we want to move along with this road maintenance. Does that sound remotely reasonable? All right.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Do we still know exactly where the road is?
Yes. It's where the gravel is. And I got it.
Was it surveyed?
We have, what you want to call that file, Brian, but we do have a file. Mr. Lewis went out, looked at a lot of prior work, put that in a format where we can really go out there at any point and do GPS coordinates. What was this? So I don't want to have the misconception of this board that you drive through where you see the road like that's center line. I think it's fair and accurate to say that it is not.
Yeah, there you go. We agree with that.
And that's why we wanted that boundary, that survey done. Something, and I don't want to cause problems. I know I asked Brian to communicate that to at least one resident, but what we did discover too, or Mr. Lewis did, is about 300 and some square feet of that pond he's saying is in the right of way.
Good.
I don't want any parts of the pond. I'm just saying when he did that survey, there's a reason to look at that, whether it's and you can see the survey rods are behind, to their point, of the fence and the bench and so forth. So I can see why it was raised, because again, that's delineating your 50 feet, not what you visually see where the gravel's located.
All right. I don't even want to get into the pond. Let's save that for another evening.
We're gonna send the
Thank
file,
God.
Brian, I don't know if we
Good
sent that
Lord.
to everybody, okay, we'll
All
make
right.
sure all residents are on board.
Within reason, it's 50 foot. It goes to Cardy's comment about taking a bulldozer through.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. It is charming up there in every way. We tear up the trees, the 12 or so that are real teeny. We get rid of the stake. I want to clarify Dustin's question, because with the laying down of the gravel, I think the question is laying down the gravel on the current road bed.
Yes.
Not where it has deviated or anything. Current road bed, that's what we mean by this. Is that correct?
100%, yes.
All right. We know where the 50 foot is. I encourage anybody that'd love to go up there. It is beautiful and very nice. Go up there and explore. Apparently there's a pond. We'll see how 30 days or until the next meeting, then we can go from there. Hopefully Mr. Wigby will submit his revised request. Does that work for everybody?
And,
Yeah.
and that request will be as normal process. It will be circulated
Yes.
to all the residents, so they have their
That's
opportunity per
correct.
position paper to comment back.
And can we clarify this? No history. Absolutely. No history, only moving forward. Road maintenance, not history of road. Does that work? All right.
And just to be clear, those, if you were ever enforce those trees that Sticks got in front of his house, they would have to go, right? They would have to go. If you want it, huh? Sure they would. They're right on the road. I mean, I brush them, huh? No. I'm talking about what I'm trying to address what Mr. Kirby said. Oh, it's a 50-foot right of way and, stuff should come out of it. Good golly. That would.
Huge trees.
I mean, you don't really want that. And not only that, from Leathers Road, when I came in there with my truck the other day to go to Sticks' house, Leathers Road to Sticks' house, I had growth, hitting my mirrors and stuff. Somebody needs to go through there and cut that back. And Darrell used to do that, but he can't do it. Okay, whatever. Okay, so now nobody's doing it, and now that stuff is hitting me in the arm when I go through there.
Stop approaching you guys to do maintenance and the clearing of the brush and stuff, because every time we did, Mr. Whitby would get in a tizzy fit and not want it done. And then we came to the situation where all was revoked. We have new residents who don't want to have any input because they're afraid of the retribution. So it's very difficult. We all get along with the one person that we try to deal with. We don't want the big trees removed, we just want the areas that we can scoot over and have somebody go by, free and clear of damages at all. That's all we ever want.
Well, you got something, Hannah?
No.
Okay.
But it looks like that because no one does it anymore.
That's right.
We don't want to.
And see, it's just gotten silly.
It has gotten silly.
Yeah.
It's-
We were waiting for the new residents to step up and do some of this stuff, and maybe he would not fight them, but it hasn't happened.
And none of this would be happening.
The new residents
Albeit
don't want to pay any money because it was funded by a few for the benefit of all.
Okay, I'm done.
All right, anything else on this?
No, sir.
All right. See how 30 days go. We will see. All right. More.
So send me an email.
Home occupations. Mr. Weekly, we had a big debate at the Planning Commission workshop, please.
Yes, and Kim, I believe you have that email. She'll bring it up. I handed you all before the meeting started.
One of your best memos, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannon.
Definitely good.
Do you want that memo that's different than what this
No,
is?
put Hannon's up there, because,
All right,
and we
bring-
appreciate Tracy participating, but put
bring that
Hannon's
up, and
up
I'm gonna
there, and
forward
then
you.
we'll work off of, what you have provided this evening.
All right, so you want his memo, or the Sunday email?
Yeah.
All right, hold on one second, because I do agree that it was pretty darn good. Kim, take the, 1 second, Mr. Chairman. This is.
Suspect everybody's
Yep,
thinking the
this is the
exact
one.
same thing here. There you go.
All right, Kim, if
Excellent.
you'll take that email that I just sent and bring that up first. The email.
Are you you're gonna lay some groundwork?
Yes,
on
I'm gonna
that?
go ahead and do that now. I'm
Yeah.
gonna fill the gaps between the visual aids. So, we had, and I'm gonna try to speak about a case, an SUP, and try to stay away from names of applicants. I'm gonna do my best. Home occupations have been around for a long time, even the definition is very vague. And as you know, these ordinance or definitions, sometimes it comes down to interpretation. But I also think it's fair to make sure we're consistent. And what's really the desire of the board in the application of ordinances? Not giving anybody a free pass, none of that, but just reading the ordinance, using some logic, common sense approach. We've had a few complaints come in, And naturally, when complaints come in, we go out. We're not active out there. We don't put a zoning police siren on and going out looking every day. It's just complaint driven. So we had what I would define as a home occupation, have a complaint and involved another state agency. They are now satisfied as far as a particular condition of that site. And it really left it in the county's lap. Are they really running a business out of A1? Well, there's many businesses run out of A1 in this county, whether you're lawn care, landscape, arborist, tow truck drivers, excavators, and so forth. So when we brought this application amongst the Planning Commission workshop, I laid that out there, that currently as the home occupation is defined, and Kim has it up there, you can find it under our zoning appendices and then go down to Article 20. That's where all of our definitions live. And definition 20-98 deals with home occupations. So as it was interpreted at the Planning Commission meeting, I'm not throwing it under the bus, I'm just reporting back to the board our discussion. This particular application has, the owners live on the premises. Well, the way home occupation is defined, if you live on the premises, it's by right, as long as you don't have commercial traffic coming to your home. But it also says, so that's by rights. But if you get into special use permit, one could read this ordinance, however, a home occupation with less than 3 employees, here's another word, who are regularly employed on the site, may be permitted by special use in C1A1. Well, if someone has more than 3 employees, are we saying you got to unemploy a couple people? The way I view this is just me, but my role is to administer the code and the ordinances and laws of the county, which the ordinances are, as well as the planning and zoning administrator, via designee of the board or through me to them, do the same thing. Over the years, and Supervisor Yao can speak for himself, but I appreciate him having conversation with a prior long-term employee who had to administer it. And the way historically it's been administered is, by right, sure, but home occupations, if you are, I'm going to call it getting in a fleet vehicle or some type of vehicle and leaving. If you're a lawn care guy, you're showing up, grabbing a vehicle, utility trailer, maybe a couple zero turns, whatever, you're going out the door. This one particular case, it's a service industry, they're grabbing some service trucks, leaving the site, go do the work, they're coming back off, dropping them off at the end of the day. So as I brought this to the Planning Commission, right now, after the first workshop, it's kind of in a pattern of, well, let's let them go through the special use permit, but we want to talk more. The concern I have there in here today is of those businesses I just spoke of, is how you interpret this. So is there any flaws in the current ordinances? Look, all ordinances, whether they still date back to 1967 when everything come into place, or even if they're 20 years old, there are times you probably should revise, look at your current climate, how it has been interpreted, how it has been applied, and then make a decision from there. I am certainly cautious about, are we going to tell many of small businesses, hey, you're out of compliant, and if I'm on the other side, I've been operating it, so whether you view me as compliant not for 30 years or more, why now, what's going on here? So Hannon and Tracy and I have discussed, and if you need more of that, Mr. Chairman, we'll scroll up. If not, I'd like to bring up Hannon's other email that has the red text. Keep them both available, please, Kim, because the board or Hannon may want to reference back to that. But yeah, thank you, that one right there. So we have talked about if you wanted to consider an ordinance amendment, maybe what that would look like. And what we were trying to do is keep it simple. So again, still, if you live on the premises, that's about right. If you get into cases where it's more than 3, apply for the special use permit. However, I like that last quoted sentence. Hannon moves to define regularly employed on the site. Look, if you want to amend it and clarify it, it says means working more than 1 hour on site. So I want to give a scenario. I view different as someone picking up a truck and trailer, pickup truck and trailer and going out mowing lawn. So we have plenty of folks doing that, and great. We want to encourage people working nowadays. I view that different than working regularly on site. If you have some type of fabrication business or cabinet workshop or something where it's more than those who reside on the premises doing that work, and you're regularly on site doing work. If you're grabbing vehicles, leaving and coming back, I mean, one can make maybe the argument of, well, is that a nuisance or amount of traffic, whatever. But I clearly, if you're asking me to interpret, I would interpret those two differently. However, it's about how you understand or see the issue we raised here, and how you see the ordinance as written. If you would like to go ahead and discuss some of the suggestions Hannah has or any input he may have, again, a wonderful email from Sunday. We're happy to hear it and take guidance, but I'm very concerned, not about the one applicant that's in the queue. There are many others in this community. So I would say, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if there are options, I would just say is this, and I don't speak for Hannon, I'm just going to say, if you like my interpretation of the ordinance, you can leave it alone. We will administer it the way I just described as interpretation, which has been consistent over the years. If you feel differently, and I'm not saying that's a wrong position, I want to be clear, then let's discuss what are maybe some options that lie before you tonight. If you like that, we can work towards an ordinance amendment, which would eventually get to a public hearing, but I believe it's kicked down to the planning commission first, and then we go to a public hearing. So I'd like to give an opportunity. Can we bring in Hannon before board and anything? Because he worked diligently on this.
No.
No.
All right, no, before we do go to Hannon, and my question to Hannon is going to be, why the planning commission proceeded to look at it as a special use permit. And it's on a basis of a different opinion on how to read the current ordinance. Wait 2 seconds. Do we want to go down this path, or do you want to go with the historical interpretation of the ordinance? And that's kind of the question that I think has to be played out. And maybe we need to go down Hannon's path first on why they interpreted it differently, and then justifications on why Jonathan's interpretation and yourself is better, or what an amended one would look like. Does that seem reasonable to everybody?
Well, yeah, your first question, I like the historical interpretation, but I would also like, since I missed that meeting, I would like to hear how they got to where they were. And then if your suggestions in here looks like to me just nothing but to clarify our historical interpretation.
Correct.
Okay, so anyhow, that's.
100%. Please, Hannon, proceed.
Mr. Turner, can you bring up 20-98 as currently written?
Yeah, and while they're looking for that, I'd just like to say, home occupations in Madison County is where it's at, okay? I am not about to sit here and cause a lot of trouble. I mean, I'm going to apply everything right, but, equally, but home occupations, that's Madison, okay?
What this county is built on and what the nation is built on. Nobody wants to mess with any of these people.
Okay.
Please.
So this entire conversation started with an idea of whether or not this particular applicant needed an SUP. And that centered on what does it mean to have in A1 if you've got somebody, regularly employed on site. So that was the first question. What does that mean, right? Does that mean you've got somebody regularly employed, meaning that they work pretty much full-time? Or does that mean that they regularly are working right there in that A1 on the premises. Then the other questions were, well, in this case, it was whether or not there was a 5 horsepower threshold was met. So that's how it got to Plan Commission on the consideration of a special use permit. And then what I sort of didn't expect was the very first phrase, 20-98, home occupation. So then the next piece, an occupation limited to persons who reside on the premises. And so the question became, well, any business that's going to have a employee that doesn't live at the house is now no longer going to be eligible for a home occupation permit. If you have any employees, no matter where they work, is if they don't live in the house.
Okay.
So that was one sort of very extreme way to read it. And then another one was where I think we got to, which was an occupation, if it's going to have any employees that don't live there, and it's going to be consistent with this, then it needs to have an SUP. So, as I said, there are tons of ways to skin this cat statewide, and a lot of different ways counties approach it. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
What about the recommendations that you've made in this last email that was just on the screen and that we all have copies of?
Sure. So this would be, I would say, a clearer version of what I believe the county currently does. So it would not, I would say, upset a lot of apple carts. One member of the planning commission, and this still may need some tweaks, right? Like I thought I was a genius, and then Tracy Clatterbrook points out, like, hey, what about this? And he's like, yeah, I totally missed it. That's how we got the yellow part. That's why that's highlighted, because that was a later version I wanted to make sure she saw. And then one member of the planning commission was saying, hey, do we need to define what an employee is? Does that mean W-2? Does that mean 1099? I mean, we could also add that in there if we thought that was going to be another issue down the road. I don't know. All that's to say is, I think we didn't want to just do some sort of simple fix that has a bunch of unintended consequences. So that's why I'm trying to do this in a deliberate manner. If the board wants to revise this, send it through planning commission with a direction. That's an option.
There's one thing, I think we need to go back one more step, is that this business was sent a notice of violation, right? So what was that notice of violation about?
For the applicant that's being.
Yeah.
The initial NOV was from a state agency, unbeknownst to the county, and that's how we were aware of it.
But why did the notice of violation result in a special use permit? I was under the impression that a special use permit was going to satisfy the notice of violation, but that's incorrect. You see what I'm saying?
If you start, so I would agree, yes, but there was discussion on that definition where, let me find it.
Because in my opinion, this particular applicant doesn't need a special use permit to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Nobody works on site and all that stuff. So I was under the impression that the notice of violation resulted in the need for a special use permit.
So, and I'm gonna bring up my NOV zoning folder.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be a different issue though, because.
It was based, the notice of violation, the way I understand it, was based on the two tanks that were in the ground that were not in compliance.
Right, well, and I think.
Which is still not a county issue.
Right, they're parallel issues.
Okay.
But they're not overlapping.
All right.
So then it was,
My fault.
it turns into a very fact-specific inquiry per business about whether or not, it's going to meet the wickets of whether or not it's by right or it's going to need a special use permit, or whether it's going to be not be allowed at all.
It was highlighted, and that was the section of definition I was getting ready to get to. So there was an NOV issued from the county to said applicant. I just had to pull it up on April 29th, 2024. And what it referenced was out of that definition, and Tracy does a good job, she highlights sections, so you're not just getting black and white. But it's the part, however, a home occupation with less than 3 employees who are regularly employed on site may be permitted by special use. It gets back to that, less than 3 employees. They have more than 3. So it's
Not on site.
This is.
correct, not regularly on site is what I would say. So there can be some gray area if you read it a certain way. Again, I believe if you want to go with historic precedent or I should say historic interpretation, forgive me. Or I would say the highlighted copy that was up here before that you had packet would be the clarifying statements that would be needed to
That's a different play. That's my next.
not confuse this. Like, from what Hannon suggested, if there is some regularly employed on site, well, I think we understand it, but if someone has that, well, clearly, we're saying regularly employed on site, if you were to amend it, is if you're more than 1 hour per day. So if you're grabbing a vehicle and going, you shouldn't be more than 1 hour a day, even if you're doing your safety check, if you got a CDL or something, you can do that in less than that. So if you feel like there needs to be clarity, whether it's from the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission, this, I think, is the simplistic way, well written, I'm not going to say.
Yep.
But the simplistic way to do that. If you feel not needed, then we'll play ball as we've been playing ball. But the issue, the NOV, from the county standpoint, was unsure of how this interpretation would be less than 3 employees.
Right.
If they're,
What?
Yeah.
The question has come up about, and Dustin made a comment about the hour, and that would go to the regularly employed. Judge going down the path on job descriptions, why we do, back to Dustin on why we need an hour deal. This is why I think we've got to go down, the planning meeting the other night was slightly painful. That's why I think we have to go down this path of amending this. I think everybody, at least the direction it looks like, is everybody on the board has no interest in going after every small business owner in Madison County. We have 0 interest in that. We also don't have interest in doing an ordinance for a specific case. I at least view this as it is affecting all of our neighbors, every person that contributes to Madison County in positive ways. The notice of violation by the county, misinterpretation of lack of clarity of our current ordinance. The Planning Commission the other night just had a different interpretation of it, so they went down the SUP path. This was painful too. I think we have to add clarity to this, and we have to push direction towards the Planning Commission on doing this. And this is one that I would certainly think, going to Sean Gregg's presentation on grandfathering, which is basically legislative, and basically legislative prerogative, that we can basically, it's relying on us, the elected body, to make these determinations. I would think that what we should do is, on the current case, I think that we should probably have the applicant table. And I'm looking for recommendations, whether it's the applicant or it's us. And it really, I don't think that it can be us as a board that does it, because it's not on our agenda yet. So it would have to be the applicant or the Planning Commission to recommending tabling. And then I think these recommendations that have been presented, and I think we go down the path on the hour, or at least get the planning commission to look into how to make that work in every citizen's favor. I think we have to add clarity to this ordinance so that this is not something that keeps flashing up in front of us.
I agree with that. I'm sorry, Supervisor Dawson.
How do we do that if we issued an NOV? How do we?
So the NOV.
Do we need to cancel the NOV?
No, the NOV, whether it's uncertainty or not, what that encourages folks to do is contact our office to discuss what we feel may be a violation, and then what's a way to rectify that. So the NOV, correct. So the county, we've encouraged them to come in. That applicant has done so.
Multiple
Now yes, and now we're working together on, okay, how do we comply? So we went through the development committee meeting. Now we're in the SUP process. Now there's this, I don't know if you want to call it discovery or whatever we want to call it, where we find ourselves. There is one other thing, members of the board, I don't mean to add more, but and it may go to your point, Mr. Chairman, there has to be some kind of cutoff on it, because if we want to implement what's there, which I think if you're going to do so, keep it simple. I like what's there. But when you get to, let's start with however, so it's the paragraph that's got the yellow highlight. However, a home occupation conducted on or from the premises with less than 3 employees who are regularly employed on the site, or with 3 or more employees who are not regularly employed on the site and without any customer traffic, may be permitted by a special use permit. So there are existing businesses that would not have that. So we need to think, is that something where you want to set a timestamp that, as of this date, those businesses would not get the SUP, or would it be the anticipation that you work to get that? So.
Don't want an SUP or a timestamp.
I guess my point, I don't want to retroactively call up somebody that's been 30 years. You need an SUP. Not only you need an SUP, which runs through this process, we don't administratively do that on our own. And then 2, there's normally a fee. I am not recommending that.
You could do the grandfathered side as predating the implementation of the amended ordinance.
Okay. I just felt it was worth
Jim,
raising
there
that.
you go. One thing on my list is, and I think, I think we've got to send this to the planning commission to go through the proper procedure. And I do think we should say that this needs to be an accelerated timeline on this. The other one on my list, and the planning commission they'll do a good job vetting it out. What negative ramifications come from this? And I say that not going after the businesses or anything, but more things done in haste often have things that are overlooked, and that's not a very good way to legislate. Please, Jim.
I agree with the historical interpretation, and I also agree the problems come in is that we need to be a little bit more specific,
Right.
particularly what defines on-site. Because picking up a truck is not on-site work, although you are actually on-site for your small slice of time. So maybe that's what we need to define. Because, picking up trucks is different than running a factory in your garage.
Yeah, and that's why we put the 1 hour in there, Dustin, is trying to exempt these people.
1 hour, what if they're an hour and a half, so why would?
Well, to my point, I'm trying to keep my employees busy.
Yeah.
And I say, wash the trucks a day so you can get 8 hours. Am I out of?
So what if we went down one job description?
Please.
They'd
No,
probably,
because they don't have job descriptions.
yeah, they'd probably need to wash them at a different site, right? I mean, so this is you're hitting exactly on the balance, right, of you don't want a zoning ordinance that does nothing, right? And it's super permissive versus something that's. Maybe so. Oh, that's fair too.
But regularly too, that means consistently, systematically,
Right.
I'm on site
Yeah.
4 hours a day.
That's right.
If I have a day where I'm on there all 8 hours because we're.
I've got to take advantage of the opportunity. Use seasonal and brief. Seasonal and brief, we have allowed, what is it, 15 events by right at this point? Is it 15 or 17?
Per
It's been
year.
so long, and I
15.
feel sad that we haven't talked about this more.
Yeah.
Is 15 events you can do by right. We're looking for that exact same thing when it pertains to this, as these people are not regularly employed on site. They don't have job descriptions, I guarantee it.
That's not what I'm saying. When I say job description, I don't mean that. I mean, job description is saying, you have a cabinet shop, your job is to
Oh,
make
yeah.
cabinetry on site. Or you work as an electrician, and you guys are leaving and picking up a truck, and they're off-site working. So it's a quick job description.
100%.
Not like what your individual things you're doing that day, but.
No, that's right.
I guess,
That's right.
so,
Thank you.
and I'm thinking of this in terms of, I've got a friend that has a landscaping business, and he has a bunch of, mulch and mowers and everything else on site. And then his guys come in the morning, figure out where they're gonna go, what they need, they load up and go. And there are a couple of neighbors that absolutely hate it, because there's trucks going through every morning. And so, I guess my point is, that's the competing interests in this to the business owner when you're talking about it being an A1 or C1.
What? We know the intent of this. I think the board uniformly supports the historic interpretation of this ordinance. Do we agree that we should task the planning commission with some clarifying language for this ordinance to allow and maintain the historical interpretation?
Yes.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we're going to enforce it the way we always have been.
I think so.
Because I called a prior zoning administrator, and that was Shaq's. I mean, she said the book is somewhere. If we could find it, the planning commission and the county attorney at the time interpreted it the way we are carrying it out now. But yeah, there's no question. I mean, adding, someone who's very regularly employed, that's, yeah.
100%.
And Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I did want to try and avoid as best I could discussion of a certain applicant that's not in front of you. I think whether it's this one or the current one, fact specific, he may still need that SUP to operate, whether it's the old ordinance or a new one. So I don't know, we can work through that one.
I don't think so, but.
Well, do you like, so what you've seen in red or yellow highlighted, do you like that? Is there suggested tweaks to that or any additions? The one I interjected and I thought I heard maybe conformity is, or agreement is, maybe looking at a date, kind of that's when the cutoff was and whoops.
Well, it needs to go through the planning commission process. They're gonna task it to a group. Their next workshop or the next joint meeting would be next week. We know we are intending to task them with this. Certainly, they can add it to a committee assignment or task some people with it. It's got to go through one workshop. I think that this thing should come back to us, and we should have an intent of public hearing sometime in August.
Okay. Can we provide this as a baseline when your directive goes to the planning
Anybody
commission?
having a heartache?
You mean this?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
just some-
I think it's this, and then also,
The other.
we are the liaisons, and Jonathan loves zoning, and Hannon has to come. So we can convey the intent of the board to the planning commission and the timeliness of this. Does that work for everybody?
Yes, sir.
Is that good?
Yep.
All right, anything else on this one? All right, let's keep going for the fun. All right, I'm sorry, Jonathan, I'm gonna make this real short. Comp plan, we've finally gotten to the point where we're gonna review it. Jonathan asked the other night at the planning commission, he wants to do 2 planners and then 2 board of supervisors members to review the comp plan prior to being presented to the entire board, correct?
If you'd like to do that, my primarily recommendation of it was to, so it's been transmitted to the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission, but any feedback that's coming in, this group would be the repository for that. Take those comments, discuss them, revise, and staff can do that. I'm not expecting board members to do it, but be part of that discussion. We revise it, get that back before the next workshop, so we're constantly moving. And it's got board involvement, so we're kind of working and not delaying this process, for a long period of time, so.
Yeah,
I encourage you to review the whole thing, and don't let the 70-some pages discourage you. I know that was mentioned the other night. It's a comprehensive plan.
We did have.
There are some statistical data and stuff that's necessary and required to be part of your comprehensive plan. It is down from 97 pages from the previous. Culpeper County's recently approved one was 226 pages. They're a bigger county, I'm not faulting them, but it is comprehensive. I would encourage you to look at things such as plan unit development, if that's something you agree with or not, or you like. Look at the agricultural data. I did ask Kim, she gave it over to the Extension Office. I want them to review in the ag portion, not only to see if they agree with those statistical data, but just in general or anything they want to add. So I want this, to be a work group, so we're not just limping along, going through our planning commission workshops. Then it gets to you, and what do you think? And I don't, let's just move along effectively and efficiently.
Yeah. What about Cardi and Judd? Everybody okay with that?
It's good, because Judd's on the Economic Development Committee, we have to have that link. So
Good.
perfect.
You all good with that? All right, they're gonna work with you. All right, excellent. Anything else on that one?
No, sir, just look for dates. We're going to be sending around dates availability so we can get rolling on this.
Good. Anything else on that one? Is there any other information, or now we're into information and correspondence? Do we have any of those?
We had our pre-con meeting for EMS renovation. Contractually, they start July 1st.
Excellent. Anything else? All right, we're now back to public comment. Public comment, it's flooding in. All the public is left. No public comment. All right, no closed session. That's great. What would y'all like to do? Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none,
Dustin and then Jim.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank y'all.
That is correct, Carter.
Yeah.